Alright, so here we go. I'm going to show you the first three, how we graph these. I'm going to start the video off talking about slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Now what m represents is your slope, and what b represents is your y-intercept. And what that means is that, let's talk about y-intercept first. This is your y-axis, and your y-intercept value tells you where the line that we're about to draw is going to cross this y-axis. And then the slope talks about either if this the line is going to be going upward or downward, or not sloped at all. It's going to talk about the steepness of the slope and if it's what direction it's facing, and that's pretty much it. If you have a positive slope, then it's going to be moving upward like this, and if you have a negative slope, it's going to be moving downward like this. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. Okay, so let's see. So remember that when we're graphing these, we're using slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So if I look at this first problem, I see, I'm going to write it right underneath that, y equals mx plus b. In this case, the very first thing I'm going to look at is my y-intercept, and that is this section right here, because b is my y-intercept. So that means that I need to plot a point on the y-axis at the value of -1. So the way I do that is I go to negative, here's my y-axis, I'm going to go to -1 and I'm going to put a point there. Alright, so that is pretty much, that's going to be my starting point whenever I'm graphing this. The next thing I'm going to look at is my slope, and my slope is this fraction right here. And notice that that fraction, it is a positive fraction, so that means when I envision this line in my head, a positive slope, because that's a positive fraction, is going to be going upward. Okay, so I know that I need to form it to where it's going upward. And our slope is going to be rise over run. So we have rise over run. I'm going to explain to you what that means. So this right here, that's your slope, okay, rise over run. What that means, if we have 1 over 4 as my slope, you see 1 over 4, that means I'm going to rise up 1 place, 1 unit, and I'm going to run over 4 units. Let me show you what that looks like, okay? I'm going to use a different color. Alright, so I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which is right here. I'm going to rise up 1 location, or 1 unit, and I'm going to run over 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to plot a point there. I'm going to keep that in red. Alright? And then I would keep it going. I would rise up 1 unit and then run over 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can envision that, it just keeps going forever off of this graph. Now you can see that this is kind of forming a straight line, so I'm going to keep it going. I'm going to go down a unit. So that's like my rise. So rise 1, run over 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. It would go off the graph again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect these points. Let's use red if I can. Oops. If I can use this tool to connect it correctly. There we go. You would use a ruler on your paper, and it looks like that. So there we go. There is the line that I just graphed using my y-intercept and my slope, which is 1 over 4. Rise 1, run 4. Now I want you to see that this line should be going upward like that because I have a positive slope. So that's why it's heading up. Once you know how to do the first one, a lot of them are going to be fairly easy. So let me get me some room here. And clean all this off. Okay, and I'm going to work on this number 2 right here. Number 2 is y equals negative x plus 2. And You learned back in 6th grade that if there's nothing in front of a variable, there's really a hidden coefficient of 1. All right? And so, but I want my slope to be in the form of a fraction. You also learned, probably way back in 5th grade, that you can turn any number into a fraction by writing it over 1. So in other words, what's really hidden in front of this x is 1 over 1. So if I use my slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, I find out that my y-intercept is positive 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to positive 2 on my y-axis, and I'm going to, let's see, positive 2 is up here. I'm going to put a point there. And then I also see that my slope in this case is negative 1 over 1. Now remember that the top number is my rise number and the bottom number is my run number. So I'm going to rise up 1 and I'm going to run over 1. Now let me show you a mistake that a lot of students do. This is what they do. They say rise up 1, run over 1. Rise up 1, run over 1. Rise up 1, run over 1. And they do like this. Okay? And then they're like, oh, I did a great job. I remembered rise over run, and I went up 1, over 1, and they connect their points, and this is the graph that they'll give us, okay? But we got to be real careful because check this out. Is my slope positive or negative? In this case, my slope is negative. You see the negative sign? So what that means is that my slope should not be going upward. It should actually be going downward. So this graph that I've done is actually incorrect. My y-intercept was correct. It is positive 2. But because I need this graph to be, this line to be going downward, I'm not going to rise 1 and over to the right 1. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rise 1 and over to the left 1. Because watch what's going to happen. Let me do it in red. Let's see. Alright, so I'm going to rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run. It's kind of hard to say. Run. Alright, and I'm going to just keep connecting these points. Let me rise 1, over 1. Alright, that's good enough. And then you would use a ruler to connect these points. There you go. Now, this is a correctly graphed line for this equation. And let me point out several ways that I know that's correct. Alright? So this is how I would grade a test. Let me get black. Okay. The first thing I would do is I would say y-intercept should be positive 2. Y-intercept positive 2. We got that. So that part is good. Okay. The next thing I would say is this is a negative slope. So therefore it should be heading downward. And it is heading downward. Okay. So that looks good. Okay. And then the last thing I would check is my rise over run should be 1 and 1. So that means I rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. And I keep hitting that line. So yes, that part is done correctly too. So there we go. Now we know it's done perfectly. Alright, last one. Well, number 3. And then I'll do some others. So we've got y equals x plus 1. You remember we said that if there's not a variable in front of that, if there's not a number in front of that x, there's really a hidden coefficient of 1 over 1. Okay? So here is my, let me get a different color. My y-intercept is positive 1 because y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to put a point at positive 1. My slope is positive 1 over 1. So that means my line should be heading upward, right? So I'm going to rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Alright, you get it. It's kind of hard to say, again. So I'm going to just connect or create some more of these points, and then I'm going to connect them. You would connect them on your paper with a ruler. Let's see. There we go. Now, it's actually best, let's see if it'll let me do it. Oh, it's not going to let me do it. What I really want to do is this line should really extend throughout your entire graph. So let me just extend it a little more. There we go. Alright. So You see that I've got that line, I've got arrows on both sides because this line goes forever in both directions. So this is what number 1, 2, and 3 should look like correctly. And again, I'll show you how I would grade this. I would say y-intercept should be positive 1, and it is. See right there, positive 1, so I'm good on that. The line should be going upward because it's a positive slope, so we're good on that. And then my rise over run should be 1 and 1. So rise 1 over 1. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. And I keep hitting the line so that I know that part is done correctly. So there you go. Perfect 100 on this graph too.